Have you ever been so frustrated by a government rule or a ridiculous fine that you wanted to just pack up and leave? Well, in 1970, one Australian wheat farmer didn't pack up. He stayed exactly where he was. Instead of moving, he dug into ancient legal archives, found a forgotten loophole, and literally broke his farm out of the country. Welcome to Exhibit Absurd. Our story begins with an exceptionally clever man named Leonard Casley. Casley wasn't just your average farmer. He was a mathematician, a shipping administrator, and a former logistics expert who had even worked on NASA telemetry tracking. In 1969, his massive 18,500-acre farm had a spectacular bumper crop ready to harvest. But then, the Western Australian government introduced emergency wheat quotas to artificially control prices. They told Casley he was only legally allowed to sell 1,647 bushels of wheat. The problem? He had 40,000 bushels sitting in his fields. Casley calculated that at the government's mandatory rate, it would take him nearly a quarter of a century to sell a single year's harvest, bankrupting his family instantly. When he filed a formal protest, the government doubled down. A minister introduced a bill to Parliament to forcefully seize Casley's farmland entirely under compulsory acquisition laws. They were trying to take his home. So, Leonard decided to use his math brain to find a way out. Casley didn't just look at local zoning laws. He went all the way back to foundational British law, which Australia was still legally bound to at the time. And deep in the ancient archives, he struck absolute gold. The British Treason Act of 1495. Passed under King Henry VII, this medieval statute explicitly stated that no person who attends upon a de facto king or sovereign lord can be convicted or attainted of high treason. In plain English, it means you can't be guilty of treason if you are serving a ruler who is physically in charge of the land. Initially, Casley just declared his land a republic. But when Australian Prime Minister William McMahon threatened him with federal legal action, Casley pulled a pro-gamer move. He realized that if he upgraded his land to a principality and appointed himself the monarch, any attempt by the Australian government to enforce laws or seize his assets would technically be an act of treason against a reigning monarch. Even better, because the government had previously addressed him in official mail as the administrator of Hutt River, they had inadvertently granted him the formal administrative recognition required to trigger the loophole. On April 21st, 1970, Casley handed the government his ultimate countermove. He formally seceded from the Commonwealth of Australia. He declared his 75-square-kilometer land the Principality of Hutt River and crowned himself His Royal Highness Prince Leonard I. He didn't do this out of delusion. He did it because, under the law, it forced the government's hand into a terrifying legal paradox. You would expect the Australian military to roll in with tanks, right? but they couldn't. If they sued him, they risked proving him right. So for years, they tried a war of petty bureaucracy. In 1976, the Australian postal system completely banned mail deliveries to Hutt River. Prince Leonard's response? He just set up an independent mail route through Canada. Then, when the Prime Minister instructed the tax department to aggressively break him, Leonard decided he had had enough. On December 2nd, 1977, he officially declared war on Australia via telegram. The Australian government chose to completely ignore the declaration, and that was exactly what Prince Leonard wanted. Just 3 days later, he sent another telegram declaring that the state of war had ceased. He then wrote to the Governor-General, pointing out that under the Geneva Conventions, a country that remains undefeated in a state of war automatically retains its sovereignty. He essentially defeated Australia by ghosting them in his own war. For the next half-century, the Principality of Hutt River functioned as a highly successful micronation, welcoming thousands of global tourists a year. They minted their own currency, the Hutt River dollar, printed passports, and issued driver's licenses. They even opened their own royal mint, manufacturing commemorative coins for things like the centennial of the Statue of Liberty and, bizarrely, Operation Desert Storm. But running a country isn't easy, and Prince Leonard even had to deal with internal treason. An overseas coin distributor in Queensland secretly registered the name Hutt River Province as his own private company. When Prince Leonard found out, he didn't call the police. He used his royal powers to formally declare the man a traitor to the crown and posthumously strip him of all his fake titles. Every empire must fall, and Prince Leonard's kingdom wasn't brought down by an army. It was brought down by the ultimate weapon, the taxman. Australian courts consistently maintained that his sovereignty loopholes were nothing more than elaborate gobbledygook. Prince Leonard passed away in 2019 at the ripe old age of 93. He left his son and successor, Prince Graham, with a staggering $2.7 million bill for decades of unpaid income tax. Compounded by the 2020 global pandemic entirely wiping out their tourism revenue, the royal family faced financial ruin. To pay off the debt, they were forced to sell the historic lands. On August 3, 2020, after 50 years of triumphant legal defiance, the Principality formally dissolved and rejoined Australia. While other Australian micronations, like the Empire of Atlantium, still exist as quirky anomalies today, no one has ever weaponized legal history quite like Prince Leonard. He proved that sometimes the most dangerous weapon against bureaucracy isn't an army, it's a library card and a massive chip on your shoulder. If you want to uncover more bizarre evidence from the most chaotic archives of legal history, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We'll see you next time on Exhibit Absurd.